Hello and welcome friends. Now are you still using nested if function for dealing with multi-level decision making within Excel? So which is one if function within the other if function and so on? If so, then it's time to simplify your work. Now today we are going to discuss about a newer and a more efficient function which is ifs function. Okay? Now you will see that using this function your work, if you are already using nested if, becomes far simpler. Okay, so let's get into it. Now out here we have a data set. We have names of a few employees out here in column A, and against each of these names we have their scores, right? So let's assume that a performance evaluation activity is going on in the company, and each employee has been given certain scores on different parameters. We're not getting into it. Now the performance grade parameters have been decided as if someone gets a score of 90 or above, that person, he or she, is a key performer in the organization. If he or she is getting between 80 to 89, then they are exceeding the expectation of the management. Any score between 70 to 79 meets the expectation of the management, and any score below 70 needs to be falls into the category of needs improvement. Now out here in column C, we'll first use nested if to get the result for each of the employee on their performance grade parameters, and then we'll see how we can use ifs to get a better result. Now let's start with nested if. I'm sure that each one of you, I'm assuming, is already acquainted with if, and you're already using nested if, right? Now in that case, you know that nested if function allow you to include multiple logical tests within a single formula, and they work by including or nesting an if function within another if function, right? So how will it look like? So I'll say equal if. Now the logical test would be the value of cell B2 for the first employee, that is Arav Sharma. If the value of B2 is greater than or equal to 90, then what would be the value of true? We'll say that person is a key performer. Okay. Next comes the value of if false. Now out here, if it had been a case that we have got only two conditions, someone getting above 90 is called a key performer, and someone not getting that is probably if they are called non-key performers, then it would have been simple. But out here we can see that there are three more conditions, right? Three more scoring evaluation patterns that we need to follow out here. So we need to bring in another if function, which is a nested if in the false part. That means if someone is not getting 90 or above, we need to check the second condition. In that case, we are checking whether that person or that score, which is the value of cell B2, is greater than or equal to 80. Now if this condition is met within the second if function, if this condition is met, which is greater than or equal to 80, then we say exceeds expectation. Now we are putting it within quotes because we want to display that text string into the cell. Okay. Now comes the false part within this. So again, that out here till by the time the formula reaches in this part, which means that the person has not scored above 90, the person has not scored above 80. Now we'll check whether that person has scored if B2 is greater than or equal to 70, comma, we'll say meets expectation. And if this particular employee has not met any of the above conditions, that would automatically mean that the scoring for that particular manpower is below 70, and we can directly write needs improvement, and here our formula ends. But if you notice carefully, you'll see that it gets increasingly harder to read as we add more conditions, isn't it? Now out here there are only 4 conditions. Imagine if you had 15 or 20 conditions, it would be nearly impossible to manage, right? Now imagine you are working with a sales team and you need to assign commission tags for 15 to 20 sales brackets. Or maybe you are grading students across multiple categories like assignment, quizzes, projects, and so on. Now, with so many conditions, a nested if formula becomes almost unreadable. That would turn into a nightmare of brackets. Right now, out here also, we have only 4 conditions, but we need to be very careful about how many brackets we have opened, or how many parentheses, or how many if statements we have opened. So, we need to close one by one. 1, 2, 3. And I think we are good to go. Now, I press enter. I have got the first result. Now, you already know that if you want to get the results for the other employees, you just need to click on cell C2 where the formula has been entered, and the bottom right corner of the cell you have got a small square. You can either click on it and drag it down, or you can just double click it to get the rest of the results. So, these are their respective results. Okay. Now, let's start working with ifs. We'll simplify this with our ifs function. So, what does ifs function do? Ifs checks whether one or more conditions are met and returns the value for the first true condition. Okay. So, syntax wise, it has got 2 required arguments and then a series of optional logical tests that can be added. So, looking at the same example, the ifs function would look something like this. So, it's equal to, instead of if, I'll write ifs, I'll open a bracket and I'll put in the first logical test. So, the logical test is if cell B2, the value of cell B2 is greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to 90, comma, what is the value if true? I'll say key performer, right? Now, instead of a true false, here I need to place the second logical test, which is again this cell is, if it is greater than or equal to 80, then exceeds expectation. Once again, another comma. If the third test, if B2 is greater than or equal to 70, then we meet expectation. Now, out here you can see that we are not required to open one if statement after the other. So, it's just you keep on putting in logical tests and the value if true. Now, here you will notice that there is no value of, there is no place for value if false. Now, what does a value if false do in a normal if function? It serves the purpose of catch it all. Like if the other conditions are not met, the rest falls under the value if false category. Now, out here we do not have that. So, this is something you need to take care of. So, we need to put in a final condition or final logical test wherein we will say if B2 is less than 70, then needs improvement. Simple. We have not opened multiple brackets. So, we need to close only one bracket and there you go. This is your formula. You drag them down and here you are. Far simpler than opening one if statement or one if function after the other, right? So, that's how you can use the ifs function to include multiple logical tests in a single formula instead of nested if. So, try that out.